This RealAg Radio podcast is brought to you by Travalis herbicide from FMC. The concentrated formulation delivers 80 acres per case of premium control. It also has a low use rate and a built-in adjuvant. And with the 2025 FMC cashback program, Travalis herbicide saves you time and money. Visit ag.fmc.com/ca for more.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Friday edition of the show. Thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also, of course, a big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. Whew, what a week. What a week. Can you imagine that the writ for the federal election just dropped on Sunday? And look at us now. Like, it just feels like that was like a couple weeks ago. Time is like an abstract at this point based on how this news cycle has been. It is great to be with you here today. And I'm looking forward to, I always look forward to Fridays because we get a chance to like reflect on the week that was, what has happened, what didn't happen, and really get a sense of where we go from here. And I'm looking forward to breaking that all down with Kelvin Heppner and Lyndsey Smith of Real Agriculture today. We also have time today for a beef market update with Anne Wasko of the Gateway Livestock Exchange. So we'll do that as well. Now, if you have any feedback on today's show, you can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find Real Agriculture across all the different social media platforms. You're also more than welcome to call the RealAg feedback line. 855-776-6147 is how you get a hold of us and participate in the conversation. And speaking of conversation, I had a great one yesterday. Give me a bit of a sneak peek. So the Truth About Ag podcast is distributed through Real Agriculture. We love working with Evan Shout and Christian Hebert. They do a great job on that Truth About Ag podcast. And I was the guest. So that new episode's dropping on Wednesday. I had so much fun with Evan. We had a great talk. The time flew by, had some great laughs, reminisced a little bit about a few things about the history of Real Agriculture. And that new episode is going to be dropping next Wednesday, so stay tuned for that. You can also, of course, tune in on Monday night for The Agronomist. That's Lyndsey Smith's show that she does every Monday night, Real Ag in prime time, 8 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Mountain, digging into some of the biggest agronomic issues that there are. She gets some great experts on the show. This Monday will be no different. And, of course, you can find that at the Real Agriculture YouTube channel or at realagriculture.com. And I'm kind of looking forward to everything that's going on here in terms of baseball back on TV. Yeah, like I'm going to ask Kelvin about it because he tends to be a little bit negative about the Blue Jays. Him and Byrne, they go negative fast. One game, everybody. Calm down. Calm down. We'll see what Kelvin's analysis was of yesterday's drubbing by the Orioles. Rough. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to get to Anne Wasko of the Gateway Livestock Exchange right after this.
It is time for today's product spotlight from Nutrien. It's Mike Howell, senior agronomist, and of course, host of the Dirt podcast. Where can growers go to find the latest in crop nutrition information to really dig into that ROI question on fertility this year?
We always like to recommend that people check out their local extension service. That's always a great source of information for local information. Also want to put in a plug for our website. That's nutrien-economics.com. On that website, we've got a lot of tools that growers can use to help determine their ROI. We've got a lot of research articles that are linked to that from your state research programs. We've got a lot of calculators there. We have a nutrient removal calculator. We've got an ROI calculator. A lot of useful tools on that website that growers can use. We've got an Ask the Agronomist feature. So if you've got a question on your local farm, you can type out a question there and I'll get that, or one of my counterparts will get that question, and we can get you an answer back on that pretty quickly. And all of this is free. It's an open website. Anybody can use that.
Peter Johnson at Wheat Pete, RealAgriculture.com, and what an opportunity! Oh my gosh! You think you can't grow better wheat? You are absolutely wrong. We're going to show you how to strive for those record wheat yields that they get in the UK and in New Zealand. You can grow 150 bushel wheat. I'll show you how.
Catch Wheat Pete's Word every Wednesday on RealAgriculture.com or download the podcast on iTunes or Spotify. And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147 Sirius XM. Hey, with volatile markets and rising costs, who likes rising costs? Who likes those? Now's your chance to be a part of the solution. It's time to secure your future with Genesis Fertilizers. Gain control and ensure access to locally produced nitrogen. Act now to protect your farm's future for generations. Visit genesisfertilizers.com to learn more. Okay, let's talk some beef markets. For the beef market update, we are joined by Anne Wasko, the Gateway Livestock Exchange. Anne, how are we doing today?
I'm good, Shaun. How are things there?
Well, they're good, but they're just, I don't know if they're as good as these beef prices.
Oh my goodness. Hot tamales. Well, so yeah, let's start there, Shaun. I mean, U.S. cattle markets continue to set new records. Last week, cash cattle in the U.S. were 210 in the south and 213 to 215 in the north. We traded a pile of cattle last week, so it's been a slow week this week to get going. It looks like we'll trade steady with those record levels from last week, but it's just been explosive. Futures markets, over the past 7 days, they've also, depending on what contract month or what category you're looking at, have also set new record highs. So markets are on fire. Here in Western Canada, the Alberta fat cattle market is trying its best to keep up. Or keep up with the Joneses, as you will. We did see dress prices this week in Alberta $5 a hundred higher, so that's going to be $4.55 to $4.60 delivered. There's been a little bit of live trade that'll be kind of over what we'll call the average. FOB the yard at $2.85 to $2.92, and those cattle will be heading south before April 2nd. So even with all that great news and those higher prices, even locally here, vis-a-vis the U.S. market, our basis on fat cattle is still very wide, very weak basis. So
is that tariff related? Is that concern about the opportunity to transact, or what's driving that basis wider?
Again, I think it goes back to the supply piece where packers are running smaller kills here. They're buying as many as they need to. So it's kind of a demand piece where there's a few more cattle around than what packers really need, but they're running at smaller kills too. So our fed cattle kills down 10% this year.
Now, and that wider basis right now, is that seasonally to like the 5-year average? Where does that land?
Oh, we're at minus 35 right now.
Ooh, so that's bigger than the 5-year average.
So a 5-year average should be more like minus 10.
Okay,
so,
well, fix that.
So we're well off the market. So we won't talk about that anymore.
Okay.
Let's talk about feeder cattle that are also still, also running at record highs, over the last couple of weeks. Some classes of cattle a little eased off a bit this week, but generally speaking, near record highs over the last 2 weeks. Auction market volumes, I think we talked about this 2 weeks ago. They've been higher. Some markets running extra sales. The demand to sell cattle is huge. And so that is definitely a play in terms of tariff preparation, if you will, or getting ahead of the unknown. So producers have been selling cattle, selling into a very high market, but certainly selling high. The other piece of news that is also record high is choice box beef prices. So they had a new record high last night, $335.75 on the choice. That's almost $8 higher than last week. It's most of the strength is coming from the middle meats, and it's just explosive. Normally, if you look at when does the cutout seasonally make its annual high, it would be closer to May or June. So this is very, very strong, especially when production in the U.S. with their heavy carcass weights right now, they're almost running as much production as they were this time last year. So it's not a shortage of beef. It's certainly a big demand for beef is what the story is so far in the first quarter of 25.
It's incredible.
It's incredible.
And I think one of the challenges is you know this better than I do, but we always talk about how we need weather and we need markets, like prices for, that supply expansion. But we've got so high here that it's like, okay, these are too good of prices. I'm not.
I don't know if a cattle producer would say that, but
no.
Yeah.
But the prices are high enough to deter me from like, this is the time where I need to step in and I need to like acquire pairs, or like I'm going to go into building mode. Is it or
Well, think about it, Shaun. I mean, if you're looking at pairs last fall, we're bringing, let's say, $5,000 Canadian here in Western Canada, and calf prices are, it takes a couple of calves to pay for the cow. I mean, there hasn't been many times in our history where we've seen, that kind of relationship. So arguably, you could say, in that, just looking at from that scenario, that's not a bad time.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Whereas, other times it's taking 4 or 5 calves to pay for that cow. So It is a little different, and it's a different way of looking at it. These are new numbers.
Don't say new, dude. Okay, whatever you do, do not.
No, I did not say that other word.
You didn't add the new to the other word that people do all the time, and that is just like you might as well.
No, it's not that.
Okay, good.
It's not that. We still have a cattle cycle. I did want to just finish a little bit on. We did have a U.S. on feed report last Friday. And it did add a little bit of the bullishness feel to this week. So I did want to touch on that. The March 1 on feed report for the U.S. saw 2% fewer cattle on feed as of March 1. The bullish number came from the February placements. They were down 18%. And that goes back to still very slow imports of those Mexican feeder cattle into Texas and Kansas feed yards. Again, still going back to the screw arm issue that closed really from late November to late January, and they're still really just trying to get on their feet in terms of getting some cattle moved north. So Mo's just saying that that's still going to be an issue here in March for placements into U.S. feedlots in the south as well.
We got some snow, wet snow in Western Canada. That's going to, inconveniently during calving time, but probably not going to refuse the moisture.
No, we're getting a little skiff here in the southwest Saskatchewan this morning. I know there's certainly more north of us.
Yeah.
We're not in the big band, but temperatures have been great leading into this. And so, at this point in time, especially for where we sit, we're going to take any moisture we can, for sure.
It's cold. That's a problem during calving.
Yeah, and we're here in East End today. We're only -3 or -4 this morning, so it's not bad at all.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know everyone's busy out there with calving season, so stay safe and enjoy it. Those suckers hitting the ground are worth a lot more money than they were.
This is exciting times for sure, Shaun.
But that just means it hurts more if you lose one.
Well, it always hurts. Yeah, and I think
carry that thing with TLC, like your kid gloves, like just.
Yeah, you do want everything, as many alive as you possibly can in this kind of market, for sure.
Are the Waskos like bottle feeding in the basement or anything like that? Or
no,
I do not see that happening there. No, I do not see that happening over there.
This is ranch country here.
I am sorry if I've now offended you. Okay, and this has been fantastic. I really appreciate it. Have yourself a great weekend. Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks. You too, Shaun.
Oh, that was great. Okay. Hey, maximize productivity and profitability with an innovative all-in-one approach to farming, combining accounting, business planning, agronomic field planning, and advanced technology. MNP Ag Intellect delivers personalized solutions that empower you to make confident, data-driven decisions. Visit mnp.ca to find out more. We'll be back with more of RealAg Radio and the RealAg Issues Panel right after this.
Growing corn? With Envita, you can cut your nitrogen and maintain yield, or maintain nitrogen and increase yield. Envita takes nitrogen from the air and turns it into nitrogen for your corn. It provides a right place, right time source of nitrogen to maximize your yield. Farmers who use Envita see healthier plants, bigger cobs, and less tipback. Envita is guaranteed to add more bushels to every treated acre. Start growing with Envita. Visit azotic.com to learn more. That's AZOTIC.com.
Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada.
I'm Lyndsey Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomists, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomist with me, Lyndsey Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Let's get rocking here with the RealAg Issues Panel here on this Friday. But first, I got to tell you all about SGS. Delivering reliable agricultural lab testing for your crop, soil, feed, water, and seed. SGS is uniquely positioned, ready to elevate your business in Canada and the United States. Call them now at 1-800-952-5407. That's 1-800-952-5407. Let's bring in the panel. Up first, Kelvin Heppner coming out of Altona, Manitoba. Kelvin, how are we doing?
Doing well here, Shaun, and hopeful for a much better game 2 from our Toronto Blue Jays as Major League Baseball kicked off yesterday.
What the heck was that yesterday?
It's going to be a long season. Could be.
We're already saying that. Really?
It's a bit of a gong show of off season, so it's just continuing into the I think unfortunately.
Man. Also joining us here is Lyndsey Smith, and Lyndsey, Kelvin just sounds like you're prototypical Toronto sports fan right there. One game we lost, it's over.
Before the season even gets going. I'll be honest though, I did not watch the game except through, I knew some people that were attending and got to watch it through Snapchat. And that was fun. So sorry about the outcome, guys. Wasn't watching. I'm still in hockey mode. I can't change to baseball mode yet?
I do the full, I've switched.
Well, we know that.
I've switched.
But I can't. I'm still on hockey mode. So let the Jays sort some things out and then I'll start watching.
Yeah, we did not. Well, and it's hard. Let's not judge ourselves versus Baltimore. Okay, that's like, maybe let's just slow down, Kelvin. Baltimore's a mate. Like, they are good. Like that.
They are, but we got to play against them in the division all year. So
okay. So
let's go up against the best.
A friend of mine yesterday said he had ordered a bullpen jacket for the Blue Jays, and he texted me at the end of the game yesterday. He's like, "I'm sending it back."
Like, guys,
he also is from Toronto, so that, like, there's a thing of negativity around that city, Lyndsey.
Well, we don't need to get into the whole Maple Leafs thing, so it's fine.
Oh, yeah, Kelvin thinks they're winning. I suppose you think the Leafs are winning the cup, Kelvin.
There's still a chance. Yeah, I'm not saying they will, but they're in a good spot heading into the playoffs.
Kelvin is ready to be hurt again.
Yeah,
he is ready.
Tis the season.
He
tis the season.
Back to that disappointment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
Anyway, it's made for good hockey the last little while. I'll be honest.
Yeah. Flames got smoked by Dallas last night. That was not pretty either. Okay, we had a great webinar. Let's get to work. We had a great webinar yesterday. It was fantastic. RealAgriculture in collaboration with Cappy, and Tyler McCann was going to be here, but I don't know. He had to make a flight to get home. It was kind of
weird.
It was super lame.
Super lame.
Lack of dedication to this program, let me tell you. We're going to post it at realagriculture.com. The Saturday email is going to have different bits of it and different stories. Encourage you to check it out. There's been a lot of webinars lately on trade and some of the tariff challenges and what's going on specifically to Canada-U.S. relations. This one was excellent. And I'm biased, but to have the quality of people that we had involved, the former Minister of Finance for the province of Alberta, Travis Taves, also former president of CCA. We had Greg Dowd, who is president and CEO of National Milk Producers Federation, Tyler Bjornson, Oliver Ward from AgriPulse, like just high quality. I learned a lot and really enjoyed it. So, Kelvin, what do you make of Prime Minister Carney's comments that the old relationship with the United States is over? That's a change in tact.
Yeah, and it sounds like there was maybe a bit of a reversal today. Again, this is the roller coaster that we're riding every day. These right now, as the Trump administration is acting this way on many different fronts, including the relationship with Canada. It's one of many different things, but many different files that is a bit chaotic right now or erratic coming from the Trump administration. But yeah, we heard Mark Carney, Prime Minister earlier this week when Trump announced these auto tariffs, say that the old relationship with the U.S. is over. It's clear the U.S. is no longer a reliable partner. I don't know. I understand the feelings that many Canadians have of we need to look elsewhere, we need to look inward, we need to look to overseas markets. But I also worry that there's political advantage here for Carney to play this up, and so I don't know. I understand what he's saying, but at the same time, I think it's also to his political benefit as we're in the middle of this election campaign, 30 days away from voting day, and so I think that, or 31 days, I guess it would be till April 28th. So I worry that it's maybe a bit overly dramatic, and it sounds like they had a phone call this morning, and from Trump's perspective, at least, it went well, and he said the nicest things he said about Canada, or the nicest tone he struck when talking about Canada, I'd say, since maybe U.S. election day. He said it was an extremely productive call. We agree on many things, and hopefully they'll come up with something that will end up being great for both the United States of America and Canada. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So he referred to Carney as Prime Minister, which is already a major upgrade versus what Trudeau was referred to. So, yeah, it's again this roller coaster, and whenever, I don't know, it's maybe a sign of an abusive relationship when somebody says something nice and you brace for impact or you brace for pain on the other side. So I think that's the situation where a lot of Canadians find ourselves in today.
Yeah, Lyndsey, what did you make of President Trump's pretty nice things about Carney? That, hey, this was a good call. That to me is now it could change by this afternoon, but as of right now, we'll I guess we'll take the potential win. I don't know.
So the fact that I don't think any of us can actually figure out, is this genuine? Is this strategic? Is this underhanded? Is this backhanded? The fact that I don't know that any of us really know how to take it is just really an overall indication of the world we are in. And when Carney says, the relationship is fundamentally changed, I don't disagree. Now, does that mean that there's no relationship and no chance of one going forward? That I don't agree with. And I don't think that's in Canada's best interest. And while it may play well to the masses during an election, that's just not realistic. And I don't think that's terribly productive. But when it comes to, yes, Trump has put on Truth Social, he called it Canada, not the 51st state. He called Carney Prime Minister, not Governor. It seems positive, but pardon me for not necessarily being able to take it at face value. I don't know what to make of it. And this is what is playing out right now in this election, in our Canadian election, is if Trump is on side with someone, whoever that may be, is that good for Canada? Can we trust that? And so I really feel like, again, we could twist this whichever way we want it to suit our purpose, or it could be the exact opposite. And I don't know which one is true. Well, and that is really difficult.
I think you bring up a really good point, because I think all of a sudden it's exposed some Canadian hypocrisy. Is the switch from Poilievre to Carney really about Trump? Or is it really about the fact that people are using that as an excuse to say they just don't like Poilievre?
But why couldn't you just say you don't like Poilievre?
I don't know. I
don't think it's that hard.
Because the whole premise of the switch from Poilievre to Carney was that the Conservatives were just going to roll over.
Yeah.
Well, who looks to have the cushier relationship at this point with President Trump? It looks like it's Prime Minister Carney. We've got the president endorsing him. We have the president calling him Prime Minister. We have the president saying, hey, I had a really good call with him. We have the president saying, I really don't like the Conservative guy. I don't even really know him, but he's not my cup of tea. I'm paraphrasing.
Yet, he wasn't that nice.
It's not pushing Canadians back to Poilievre.
No.
It's very confusing here what Canadians want going forward. Kelvin, crazy talk, or what do you think?
No, I think I agree with those sentiments. And in some ways, we haven't seen movement. We haven't seen how Canadians are reacting to the comments that have been made this morning. We don't know that yet. I think that Poilievre, and we have seen some of this come to light in the Conservative Party, within the Conservative camp this week. We've seen a rift come to public light that I think we haven't seen since the days of Aaron O'Toole's leadership, and since Poilievre with Doug Ford and his main advisor Kody going after Jenny Byrne and the Poilievre camp this week, and those are two people that used to work together in the Harper administration, and so for that to come to light, and Tenike was pretty scathing this week in terms of pulling the fire, saying the Conservative Party needs to pull the fire alarm, and that they are basically in a plane that's headed into the side of a mountain right now unless they pull up and pivot, and saying that that Poilievre needs to avoid being Trump-like and having Trump, the slogans, the Canada First slogan. There's been people that have made, like, there's a clear line there to the America First slogan that the Republicans and Trump have run with, and those types of things. There needs to be more differentiation, and it'll be interesting to see if we see that pivot. Though I wanted to quickly comment, though, also on Lyndsey's point about all this chaos and not understanding where this ship is headed, where the Trump administration, where their priorities even lie, or what direction they're headed. I think that's a broader statement of the world we're in right now that is inflicting a cost on not only Canada's economy, but the U.S. economy, the global economy. Businesses around the world right now are at a loss. Key stakeholders are at a loss. I dare say even people in Trump's inner circle right now, in some cases, or in increasingly closer to the inner circle, are at a loss as to what the president is planning to do and what the direction is. And so, to me, there might be an unaccounted for cost there to the economy that some of the big thinkers around Trump haven't accounted for. Sure, there's been lots of talk about the cost of tariffs and how tariffs increase consumers' costs and are inefficient for markets, but just the cost of all this erratic behavior, decision-making, the whipsaw effect is something. I know we've mentioned this before on the Friday panel, but I just wonder whether that cost to the economy is being measured and has been accounted for in their planning for these tariff measures and all these different economic policies.
Yeah, I could make, if I had to make up an argument to defend some of the chaos that's creating outside the United States, as an example, I can make that argument, like keeping businesses on their toes, the government unsure what to do, how to react, how do I respond?
Stopping investment in, on the Canadian side of the border or Mexican side of the border, driving that investment back into the U.S. Yes,
100%. The part that I can't reconcile in my head, and I said this on AgriTalk earlier today, is the domestic U.S. business and the uncertainty that's been created. I think a lot of times the American side focuses too much on all of the chaos outside the U.S., but there's no one's paying attention right now to the fact that there's some head office in Ames or in Phoenix where they're having to deal with this uncertainty too. And they're not just a domestic business; they're an international business as well. And so that we look at the consumer confidence numbers that came out of the U.S. here today. Ouch! They hurt. Yeah. People are saying, "Listen," and I heard this at Commodity Classic, and we talked about this on the show. People want some certainty. If it's going to be a 10% tariff across the board and it's going to be a revenue-generating vehicle, just get there. Just do it. If we are going to renegotiate USMCA, let's just do it. Let's get on with it. And we're going to talk about that USMCA renegotiation and a few more topics when we come back here on RealAg Radio. But first, farmers, trust is everything. Genesis Fertilizers is making real progress toward providing reliable, locally produced fertilizer. Join the ownership group and protect your bottom line. Learn more at genesisfertilizers.com/credibility. Every farmer defines success differently, and every farm has its own unique challenges. Corteva Biologicals is partnering with Canadian farmers for their success, offering unique solutions that improve and protect crops from start to finish, based on each field's needs. Using proven, predictable solutions across all crop stages, Corteva Biologicals helps build healthy, productive, and profitable farms. Corteva Biologicals, we're growing together.
It's summertime, and you've got a lot of important decisions to make when it comes to your corn crop. Let the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com help guide you through those big decisions with input from leading experts in the field. If it's spray timing, disease identification, or any other field issue, the Corn School's got you covered. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio, everybody. Hey, this segment's brought to you by Oxbow, the latest innovation from New Farm. They're always innovating over there at New Farm. A versatile broadleaf in-crop herbicide powered by Duplasyn technology. Oxbow is your workhorse on resistant kochia and other tough weeds. Go to newfarm.ca to talk to your local, or to talk to your local New Farm rep or your local retailer. It's newfarm.ca. Okay, we were talking about the USMCA renegotiation, and there was a comment earlier this week about this. I got to find it. House Finance Panel Chair says USMCA deal should be renegotiated. This is a Republican from Arkansas, French Hill, who is the committee chair, says it is best to tackle this Canadian-Mexican issue inside a new and revised USMCA. But honestly, why not? Like, let's get there. If that gets us to the other side of this tariff circus, Kelvin, I think that's music to Canadians, Mexicans' ears.
For sure, and that's the kind of stability that I think policymakers, lawmakers, and business, again, are looking for right now. Some sort of framework where we know the rules and where we can negotiate in good faith. And that's, I think, maybe the challenge is that the Trump administration has shown that the rules that they agreed to in the past don't stand, or they're not following them when it comes to USMCA agreement right now. As we look at all the tariffs on Canada and Mexico, including the auto tariffs this week, that's I think the challenge is sure, we invest in time and preparing for negotiations and going through the negotiation process. What guarantees do we have that we can trust trust this administration? I think that is the big question mark right now, where there needs to be some sort of evidence that we can do this in good faith.
Yeah, and the trust factor there, Lyndsey, is Mexico and Canada agreeing to fortress North America listen, canola growers, increasing tariffs on China versus taking away tariffs, increasing the pressure on China, having be fully committed to this North American idea, perspective of collaboration. But at the same time, there needs to be trust there that the old rug isn't pulled from underneath Canada and Mexico, and it ends up costing us in the end.
Guys, didn't we have that? So, pardon me.
No, I don't think
do you know what I mean? Like,
no, we didn't.
This existing USMCA deal it has been completely ignored in all of this, and essentially does not exist in the de facto, actual use of this. So, to Kelvin's point, exactly that. Yes, sure, let's open it up. But there has to be assurances that it actually means it's worth the paper it's written on. Okay? We can't have a renegotiation of a deal that is also just going to get ignored. So please, dear everyone actually working on this, and we know, Canada will not get as good of a deal from what is in there now. We get that. But exactly that, if a renegotiated USMCA would offer at least the parameters by which we can conduct business for the next 5 years, 3 years, 10 years, whatever, great. But it has to actually be respected by each country that actually uses it.
So here's the funny part.
Pardon me, but I don't
Here's the funny part, Lyndsey. The American view on this is that's super rich.
Yep.
That you want to talk about following the rules? Let's talk about following the rules and Chinese auto parts being masked as Canadian auto parts and meeting the USMCA requirements.
Or dairy tariffs, right? The tariff-free quota and actually having processor access. I'm not saying Canada's innocent in this by any stretch of the imagination. Got it. But at the same time, Trump was in power when this deal was put in place and he basically threw it out the window. So yeah. So let's get back to the table. But then whatever is agreed upon has to we need some sort of certainty that whatever is agreed to gets meted out. Yes, from each perspective, from Canada's as well.
Yeah, I think traditionally we've thought about the USMCA as this trade agreement between the three countries. What is the tariff load? How are goods classified? What does that look like? It's become more of somewhat of an economic pact in terms of how North America is going to function operationally, complementary supply chains. Notice I didn't say integrated. Complementary supply chains, and how that is a response to China. In some way, taking what was supposed to be the Trans-Pacific Partnership as far as a pushback against China, taking it to another level. Does that make sense, Kelvin?
I'd say the USMCA versus NAFTA was already a move in that direction. It had the clause where none of the countries were allowed to sign trade deals with non-market economies, aka China. So I think that was already a large part of the intent behind the USMCA. But again, it's been thrown out, or essentially thrown out. And so I don't know. To me, you could argue that USMCA or CUSMA, whichever country's title for it you want to use, was already a move in that direction.
But has it been thrown out? It's being challenged, but I don't know if it's been. There's people
it's been disrespected. It's not being followed,
and it's been ignored. And there's no dispute resolution.
Business like there's cattle going across the border today, based on a USMCA agreement. The USMCA agreement is still in place and it is functioning.
But where the U.S. is breaking the rules, there's no way of enforcing it.
Yeah,
and that's the dispute resolution that we agree.
There isn't one. Yeah.
It doesn't work. The U.S. isn't listening to it.
Well, I know.
So again,
the WTO path. We didn't like the WTO path because it took too long. We've agreed.
Canada liked the WTO path.
Canada liked it.
Yeah, well, I know
Canada needed that WTO.
Did it work? I don't think Canadians
it worked for us.
That it worked.
It worked on country of origin labeling.
It worked on that. But there are
after over a decade of fighting over it, it did eventually work.
Yeah, that ship sailed though. It's not.
But I just feel like. And this is what happens when trust is broken. It takes, you have to earn it back. And right now, as a country, as a trading partner, and I'm not saying this to the individuals within the industries, don't get me wrong, but overall, the administration has completely, with Trump at the helm and with what Trump is pushing through and what his people are meting out, has completely broken the word, the respect, the trade relationship, I completely agree, is fundamentally changed. And you can't just assume that if you have broken a contract that I'm suddenly going to sign back up in good faith and be like, yep, you're not going to do this again. So pardon me if I'm not going to be super excited that any USMCA 2, NAFTA 3.0, I don't care what you call it, I'm not super thrilled, and I think many people would share the thought that, yes, I would love to see it negotiated, but renegotiated in good faith and actually followed, which right now, when people show you who they are, you should believe them. And frankly, that trust has to get earned back. And again, this isn't about individuals who are actually going to, negotiate this, whatever. This is all about whether or not anything we agree to actually gets respected. And at this point, I'm not so sure that you're going to have to prove it. Basically.
Yeah, I just don't see us as it's a one-sided not being respected. Like I don't disagree. I'm not choosing sides. I'm just I just want to make sure that we are not pretending to be like these angels of trade rules, where we are this utopia of as agreements are written and the things that we do. That is not what we do as Canada. That is not
we are so reliant on exports that we need rules-based trade.
Exactly.
We don't have leverage. The U.S. has leverage. And that's what the U.S. is flexing their muscle, and that is what the Trump administration's policy is all about. And they realize that. They've recognized that. And so that's what's happening. And it's just that if we want to play by the rules, Canada needs other countries to agree to play by the rules, and right now it's kind of schoolyard rules in terms of whoever's strongest.
And don't get me wrong, honestly, anything we do renegotiate now, let's say everybody agrees that we are going to open USMCA up early and renegotiate. Canada is not coming out with a maintaining of what we've got. We're not. Canada is going to have to negotiate and actually give some things up, and to your point, Shaun, follow it through and actually allow the access. So it's not let's be clear here.
But we did very well the last time. If you look,
we're not going to do that well. I'm telling you. I think we have to be very. No, I'm not being defeatist. I'm being realistic. Is that if we want certainty, if we want a deal that the Trump administration, that the U.S. will respect, it's not going to be as good for us as USMCA or as good for us that NAFTA was either. We are going to give stuff up, but right now, we are in a rock and a hard place, is that we have to choose, and we're probably going to have to give some more stuff up. I don't think it's defeatist in that it would mean at least we'd have a return to rules-based trade. We'd have our North American bloc or whatever we want to call it if we can depend on that, we can navigate a way forward. But I think we need to understand that we have value to the U.S. Absolutely. Our complementary supply systems, whatever you want to call it, these are all good things, but we are not the superpower. And so we need the rules-based, but it's probably going to cost us. But honestly, I think the overall cost will be less than what this is for the next 4 years.
Yeah, it was interesting in the webinar chat yesterday, in the Q&A. You could really, and I see this in our emails from the audience as well, is I would put people in 3 camps of what Canada needs to do. Maybe 4 camps. There's the people that believe that interprovincial trade barriers are like, forget about all this external trade. If we just trade amongst ourselves, oh my God, Canada would be in the ultimate. Okay, well, there's that group. Tell by the way I'm talking about what I feel about that situation. Maybe I shouldn't be so biased to this. Okay, so we've got that group. Then we've got the group that believes that Europe is the answer to all of our prayers. They like what they saw from Carney and Macron a week ago. There's that group. Focus on Europe. Then we've got the group that believes the U.S. is the path. That's really the legit path. That's the path that we've had. We're adjacency. We're the gel. There's that group. And then we have the group that is, there's more out there than a few. Forget the U.S. China. China is our new partner. Will lead us to the golden road of prosperity. And so that's the 4 camps. And there is some crossover. It's not that, it's not mutually exclusive, but those are kind of the 4 perspectives I continue to hear. Lyndsey, final word on that before we take another break.
Oh, I thought Kelvin was going to vote. And I would say it has to be all 4. So there you go. It can't be any one of them. And that isn't a cop-out. That's reality.
May not be possible.
I know.
May not be possible.
That's the poopy part, to use radio appropriate language.
What I said to Kelvin, we were chatting on the phone, and I said, it's really interesting. It's if you are forced between the U.S. or China in terms of a partner, that's a certain kind of conversation. I think it's a pretty easy answer, but others don't. But when we get to choose Europe or choose the U.S., that's going to be a much more interesting conversation amongst Canadians if put to the test on that one, Kelvin. You get the final word before we wrap up.
I think there's also very large differences here between political rhetoric and what's popular politically in Canada and reality. You go back to the 90s, and Jean Chrétien, former prime minister, who's been a big backer of Mark Carney now too, he was quoted as saying, "I like to stand up to Americans. It's popular." And I think Carney is tapping into that right now too. But in reality, geography, our cultures, there's so many different factors that say I think the option, that third option, I believe it was on your list of 4 there, Shaun, of trading with the U.S. and continuing to have the majority of our exports go to the U.S. is the future. We can, like Lyndsey said, work on all the other things as well. May not work to maintain the relationship with China if we want to maintain the U.S. market. That is way more important. But I think that ultimately Canada must keep working with the U.S. no matter what our political candidates say during the election campaign right now.
Field Heroes, powered by the Western Grains Research Foundation. Whether you're a farmer, researcher, educator, visit fieldheroes.ca to learn how beneficial insects can work for you. Here's the key: for free. New episode of the Pest and Predator podcast has dropped. Encourage you to check that out. Season 6. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts or at RealAgriculture.com. We'll be back with more of the RealAg Issues Panel right after this.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is your one-stop shop for everything a canola grower needs. Check out our free video series on YouTube for all the latest in canola agronomy, research, marketing, and more. Don't have time to watch? Download the podcast version of the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com or anywhere you download your podcasts. Stay on top of all things canola with the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM, as we head into the weekend, the last weekend of March. It is April next week. Heads up, April 1st, next week. Stay on your toes, everybody. Stay on your toes. Just like, we got to be really careful around here, Kelvin and I, because Lyndsey pulls some sneaky stuff once in a while.
It's too bad we're not in the same space, because there would be a lot of like things hidden in toothpaste tubes and all sorts of whoopee cushions, but yeah.
Whoopee cushions?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. That was the best thing as a kid or as an adult. Hey, don't put your yield at risk. Put your trust in proven solutions. Envol Nitrogen Stabilizer, Super U Premium Fertilizer, and Tribune Nitrogen Stabilizer from Koch Agronomic Services. These products offer higher active ingredient concentrations. Imitator brands just can't match. See the difference at defendern.ca. Kelvin, we heard from before the official election call, Minister Blois had put out some big changes. Well, how he put it, in terms of what should happen with BRM programming, AgriStability going forward. And we had AJ Gill from MMP on the show on Wednesday. Now, he kind of seemed to be optimistic the provinces were going to move ahead with this, but not so fast.
No, so this is something that we've been trying to dig into all week, trying to figure out where the provinces stand. So on Saturday, late Saturday in the day, the eve of the election campaign, the writ period beginning, Minister Blois and Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada sent out a news release saying changes are happening to AgriStability to help offset the loss of income due to the China tariffs. Well, you look closely into that news release and the word proposed was used in there. So that was our first hint that, hang on, this actually isn't going ahead because the provinces need to sign on this. AgriStability is 60-40 funded between the federal and provincial governments. Provinces aren't saying anything. And this is abnormal, too, in terms of how business risk management program policy changes are made. Usually it involves a consensus of the provinces or provinces representing majority of farmers across the country. And so sure enough, and this is what we spent all week trying to figure out, is what's the difference between what Minister Blois announced on Saturday before the government went into caretaker mode and a Liberal election promise on the campaign trail, because right now it doesn't look like there's much difference. We have seen some provinces, Manitoba, BC, as AJ alluded to, are positive. And in BC's case, they've provincially taken on some enhancements to AgriStability to offset the impact of weather disasters there. Manitoba government, Ron Kostishin, told me this week that he's also on board and Manitoba would sign on. But really, this is all up in the air until after the election. And of course, we would have to see whether that's a Liberal or a Conservative government and whether they still have this as a priority or something on the table. And we heard from Saskatchewan's Ag Minister, Daryl Harrison, basically blasting this announcement as an empty promise, saying that they received no details, that there's no way of enacting this before the election is over, that type of thing. That at the same time, he didn't say that Saskatchewan wouldn't sign on. So Saskatchewan could potentially still sign on if this offer is still on the table after the election, whoever forms government. But in Alberta and Ontario, we've been inquiring, waiting to hear from them too. And in some cases, they've told us we don't want to comment, we don't have enough information, that type of thing. So it is, it's right now it's all up in the air. And again, it's looking like this is largely a campaign promise, an election promise, not something that can be enacted. And so we should also maybe touch on what the enhancements were. It was an increase to the compensation rate from 80 to 90% and a doubling of the cap, the trigger, the threshold for a margin decline would still be at 70%. So you still have to see a 30% decline in income to trigger this higher compensation rate.
Yeah, it's whenever we talk about these changes, Lyndsey, what continues to come up is the branding. I think whenever we do the new Canadian Ag Policy Framework, we need new names for everything, because some of the perceptions, right or wrong, are very negative towards some of these pieces of these programs, no matter what the numbers say. I think we need a rebranding.
I would agree. It's not helpful when you can change it to AgStab. I don't think that has the most positive connotations, but realistically, we have had this suite of programs for quite some time. I would put money down that if we have a change in government, we would see a full rebranding, because of course, governments do like to put their stamp on things. So if you remember on the Conservatives, we had Growing Forward, and then it got changed to CAP and then to SCAP. So I think that if there's a change of government, that goes without saying. Now, if there isn't, I do still think, and we are at that time where we are looking at these programs. We are potentially going to have a new, we're functioning under the Guelph statement from a couple years ago. Now there will be sort of a new vision this year, likely. So yes, it's probably time, but it's also, and this is what, of course, we've talked about how many times, is do these programs, whatever they're called, do they work? Are they funded to the level that they should be? Do they trigger when they should? And one of the things I think that is still a key part of this is AgriStability is not meant, it was never designed to ensure profitability. It's designed essentially as insurance to keep you afloat another year to continue. It is not meant to ensure that you make your regular level of income. It's really just meant to keep you afloat. And again, I think that there is, for some of these programs, there's just, we expect them to do something they were never designed to do, and therefore they always fall flat.
So in January, Real Agri Studies and Cappy asked a question related to this. And we asked it a year ago, and the number's roughly the same. Okay, so it hasn't really changed in the last year. And that's around which of the following best represents what you believe the objective of government subsidized risk management programs should be. 24% saying to protect farm incomes and ensure farmers are profitable. So we've got a quarter of the pool of population of farmers that believe that it's actually to make me profitable. And you're right, that's not what it's supposed to be. And so if that's what right away, a quarter of the farming population is never going to be happy with what the result is of the program, no matter however it's structured, 70%, 80%, 90% coverage, whatever it is, it's not going to move the needle in terms of how people view it. So rebranding needed, seriously.
And those discussions, like Lyndsey said, are supposed to be happening after the election this summer at the FPT meeting. They're supposed to be working on the next ag policy framework. But we're also seeing farm groups, and we will have an interview with Kyle Larkin of Grain Growers of Canada on the radio show next week, probably. Grain Growers is among the farm groups that are calling for a totally separate program, ad hoc program, to offset the impact of farmers' bottom lines due to the tariffs from China.
Okay, we got a minute left. Has there been an impact to bottom lines? What happened? Has there been?
Yeah, the price of canola dropped $1.50.
Okay, I'm going to try to.
In a minute, can you please explain all of this?
But not all farmers on new crop. How many farmers would typically be sold at this point? These are paper losses, aren't they?
Oh, we still have canola in the bin here.
Yeah,
from old crop too.
So your balance sheet looks worse, not your income statement.
Yes, exactly. So how do you measure that? That's one of the challenges with coming up with a program. How are they ever going to measure this?
Okay, well, good news for everybody that's listening on the RealAg Radio podcast. We're going to continue this conversation, plus the stories that we did not cover, including the Canadian consequences of the U.S. trying to put over $1 million fine on all Chinese ships coming into U.S. ports. There's a Canadian angle to that we will definitely discuss. Kelvin, have yourself a great weekend.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Lyndsey, all the best to you.
Bye, all.
If you have any feedback, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or you can always call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. Chat again next week. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this RealAg Radio podcast, brought to you by Travalis Herbicide from FMC. When your crops need in-season protection against key weeds, Travalis Herbicide is the go-to heavyweight for combating large weeds like late-stage wild buckwheat, cleavers, and kochia. And with the 2025 FMC Cashback Program, you can save up to 15%. Visit ag.fmc.com/ca today.
And as they say in college basketball, we're in the bonus segment. No free throws for any of this gang. Lyndsey Smith, Kelvin Heppner, Shaun Haney. What a Friday. We're going to get to the stories that we didn't talk about. But Kelvin, maybe I was being a little bit flippant at the end there, but I think there's a lot of people questioning, like, yes, it sounds good to have compensation for the market losses out there in canola, but we're a long ways from harvest. And we don't really know what happens. Like, are these tariffs in place for a long stretch of time, a short stretch of time? I think there's a lot of unanswered questions. I think the governments of both stripes, whoever wins this election, I think they're going to drag their feet on this one.
That would be the precedent, I would say, too. If you look at the impact of the tariffs on fertilizer coming from Russia, it would be another example where government didn't administer direct compensation. They tried to, or they said it was done through other programming, that type of thing. And I think that's where Minister Blois, and this is not what farm groups want to hear, and farmers too that are calling for direct payments, but AgriStability is about a change in farm income on an annual basis. That's where it could capture the impact of this, along with whatever other reasons there were for a drop in that farm's income versus their reference margin or their average from previous years. So I could see the government trying to move this into an AgriStability type program rather than creating some ad hoc programming, although that wouldn't be maybe as politically popular.
Hey, Lyndsey, what story did we not get to that you wish we would have got to? What did we not talk about?
The writ dropped on Sunday, guys. So
that was only on Sunday?
I know. This is what I was going to say in the regular portion of the radio show is that it feels like this whole AgriStability conversation was like 2 weeks ago. No, friends. It was a week ago. The election was only called on Sunday. And so, yes, I know we've covered that on the show, et cetera. But like for this issues panel, we failed to sort of tackle that as a news piece. Also, in addition to that, guess who my Conservative candidate is, guys?
Good question.
Ottawa area.
Ottawa area.
Is it Mark
Carleton? No.
Oh, Carleton. No, it's Pierre Poilievre.
It's Pierre Poilievre. So that was, so under, now that we are in election mode, of course, the new lines have been drawn for certain jurisdictions. And so I used to be in what was Canada Carleton. So it was the two. They have split out essentially the rural areas from the suburban areas around Ottawa, and Pierre Poilievre is my Conservative candidate. So that was it's kind of cool, I got to tell you, to be driving around and seeing these signs, and I would think he will be my MP. Will he also be Prime Minister? Big question.
Well,
but
right now
cool.
it don't look that way.
It sure doesn't, does it?
Momentum is going in one direction. It ain't the Conservatives' direction.
Yeah, right now polls still showing Liberals with 30, 40 more seats based on or the riding seat distribution based on what the polls are showing. I think in terms of one big story we didn't talk about, though, Shaun, and that has not been covered to the extent that maybe it should have, that's the failure of the NDP. Like Conservative Party support, if you look at popular vote or support in the polls right now for Poilievre and the Conservatives, it's right there, right where Harper majority support was when the Harper Conservatives won a majority government. But the thing then was that Jack Layton led a huge orange wave with the NDP that decimated the Liberals. And right now the NDP are in single-digit percentage territory, potentially losing party status in the House of Commons, things like that. And so if anybody wants Poilievre to be the next Prime Minister and re-elected in Lyndsey's Carleton riding, I think they better hope that Jagmeet Singh and the NDP get their act together.
Well, and so is this it for Singh? This is his last kick at the cat? Like,
I think so.
It has to be, right?
I guess the bigger question is if Poilievre doesn't win this, is this the end of Poilievre?
Probably. Doug Ford.
I would think so. Conservatives eat their own. We've seen
with that rift becoming public this week between Tonight and Byrne, I think Doug Ford is in the waiting room right now for the federal Conservative leadership if Poilievre doesn't pull this off.
What did I do? What did I do to get so lucky, you guys? Look at this. They're just coming for me. Okay, but back up a second. I do think actually the story we haven't talked about, the absolute tanking of the NDP, and someone pointed out, much smarter people than I, and it has been just unbelievable to think about, is imagine where Jagmeet Singh was before Christmas. Like, he could have taken down the government. He could have. And probably been leader of the opposition with a lot of clout. And, oh my gosh. Like, now he may not even achieve party status. Like, this is unbelievable to me. When you sit down and think about it, like, oh my gosh.
I'll give you another one. I think one of the big failures out there is the People's Party of Canada.
They still exist?
They do. He has not moved the needle.
I didn't know he was still around, to be honest.
I think that's kind of a failure too. Like,
that
seems to be floundering as an idea. So it really comes down to, like, as much as we have all these different parties, boy, we have kind of, this election has been, it is a two-party system right now. When you look at this race, and you talk about what's changed for Singh since December, think about Polyev.
Yeah.
Like, there were transition meetings that were happening in terms of, what could happen for agriculture going forward. And now you look at it and you're thinking about if you're going to be leader at the end of the day, and precedent has shown you, Scheer got one kick at the cat, O'Toole got one kick at the cat. So why would Polyev be any different? This is fascinating. Now, it's not over. There's still a month to go. It is not over, but the trend is not the friend right now of the conservative movement at all.
Mm-hmm.
Although if you look at the riding turnout, or the event turnouts that Polyev he's drawing 4,000 or 5,000 people at some of these events, is what they're counting, at least, and it's in the thousands, enormous crowds. So I know that's just anecdotal, but there's certainly a strong contingent of really hardcore support there that is still showing up at these rallies.
And I think what's important, again, is recognizing the way Canada is set up is that, you need Ontario. And that, I think, is like, so I don't want to say, like, yes, the turn in the Liberals' fortunes and at the expense of the NDP and Pierre Poilievre, yes, is, amazing to see, but it is still a race. We're only a week in. We do have some time to go, and there is a lot of support for Poilievre and the Conservatives. It's just, where is that support? Because ultimately in Canada, yes, Harper proved you can win an election without Quebec. Yes, but you need some Quebec support. But Ontario decides it, and so it's not to say that there isn't support out there. It's just where that shift happens really could spell the outcome, really, before we even get going.
Yeah, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but
exactly.
To that point, Lyndsey, I think you're going to have a lot of Western Canadian Conservatives being like,
what are we doing here, guys?
What are we doing?
Which I think is really, I think it's an incredibly important aspect of this that needs addressed, is that, like, the West, there's always been this Western alienation and et cetera. And, like, yes, and it exists, everybody. And if we choose to ignore that, and I'm saying the royal we, like, that is to our detriment. I do think this is something that is incredibly important, and that, Ontario and Quebec need to actually recognize, like, you are not all of Canada.
Carney's, everyone's, putting this this election as, whoever wins, their greatest challenge is trying to find on their side of this with the Americans, okay, and in dealing with President Trump. That's maybe the short term. The longer term challenge of a Carney-led government is going to be holding the whole Confederation together. You got Quebec talking about having a referendum. Mm-hmm. I disagree very much with Jen Gerson of The Line in terms of, she thinks that, all of this Trump effect is lowering the Western separation movement. I think a Carney election is going to be a spark for it. Not, and not the 51st state stuff, just as a separate entity. I think we're going to hear a lot more about, like, his job is going to be to kind of hold Humpty Dumpty together, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one of that's where it comes down. The negotiation with Trump is important, because if Canada has to play the card of export taxes on energy, that is a tipping point.
Let me tell you
that Ontario, even Ontario Conservatives, are suggesting that Poilievre should play that card. So that's.
Do you think he would? So, I mean, this is sort of an aside, but, like, would he?
Doug Ford would.
Doug Ford would.
If the question that Poilievre is supposed to be asking himself right now is, what would Doug Ford do?
Mm-hmm.
Then
he would.
That's on the table.
Yeah.
I'll just be hiding down here.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, and with that, we're done. And I would like to go away now.
I want to talk about this U.S. chip thing. Okay, I know.
Oh yeah, we do have.
We got to run here because this is. We had Arlen Huberman on the show on Wednesday. StoneX. Arlen said it. Oliver Ward said it to me this week from AgriPulse. Jim Wiesmeyer said it to me this morning. This idea is the most consequential Trump policy for agriculture that exists. This trumps the tariffs. Okay, like, all the talk about the tariffs is one thing. This whole idea of having proposed port fees on Chinese-made ships or fleets that have China ships in them, which is a lot, is creating a lot of havoc. So the National Grain and Feed Association, they helped commission a comprehensive study analyzing the economic impacts of the proposed port fees. Okay, so what they found was wheat production in the U.S. projected to decrease by 32.83% due to a 64.39% decline in exports. Corn anticipated to drop by 3.57% due to 8.78% decline in exports, reducing production revenue by about $3 billion annually. Ouch, Kelvin. That hurts.
Yeah, I see this hurting on the Canadian side of the border. This will affect us in two ways. One is the market price. Our prices of almost all the commodities we grow are based off of American futures exchanges. And of course, if the futures drop in Chicago, not good for our prices at Farmgate here either. And the other thing is our trade infrastructure, our export infrastructure would be overloaded with American product trying to get out of the continent via Canadian ports if Canada doesn't have this same type of fee on Chinese ships. And so our infrastructure that is already tapped out in many cases and bottlenecks in many cases when it comes to the West Coast and other, even the St. Lawrence at certain times of the year, would definitely face more pressure in this case too. And then you get into discussions around the revenue cap for railways, for hauling grain, if it's American grain coming north, that type of thing. And so, yeah, I think this could be quite detrimental. Sure, there will be some benefit to Canada in terms of being a backdoor and being able to facilitate trade with the U.S. if those Chinese ships can't come to the American ports. But on Canadian agriculture, I see it being the net effect being quite detrimental too.
Well, and just to get out ahead of it, you also add in the layer, so us Canada being a backdoor to get product out of the U.S. to overseas markets. Do we have tariffs in place at the time?
Similar to the EV issue. It's similar to the auto.
And that's not going to be very appealing to the Fortress North America concept where, hey, all these Chinese ships can come to the Port of Vancouver and unload or load and do those kinds of things like that. Some of this,
there's two things, right? This is the Trump administration trying to have its cake and eat it too, I guess, which I'm sure they're going to love that French reference. The second part, of course, to this is, again, as we've talked about on the show, the idea and the ideals of this like reshoring manufacturing, of like trying to support made in America and all that sort of thing, not a bad idea. But someone point on the map where I can build these ships in the next 2 months in America.
Well, it's a 10-year.
And have them done.
It's a 10
exactly.
Years.
It's a long run.
Right? We're trying to seismically shift manufacturing that is a many years long process in months. You can't, there is no magic wand. You cannot create something out of nothing. And while you can, sure, from the American side, if you want to tell me, well, you got to do something or nothing changes, sure, okay, cool. But like, hello? And at some point, how do you just, like, what is the solution here? If we're going to tank markets because you can't move product or like all of these things, are you just going to then keep shoving money out the door to people's mailboxes? Like, how is that sound economic policy? Like, just this one to me is a bridge too far. Like, I'm not sure where this all goes.
I think you're right, though. A lot of people, I can get my head wrapped around. We really need more, probably more North American built ships.
Sure, absolutely.
That makes sense.
For sure. That is national security argument stands with.
Yep,
that's a non-partisan issue in the U.S., especially. Yep. Like Democrats are on board for that too, completely.
Yeah. There's definitely Canadian
just how you do it.
Follow it. Yeah, people need to follow this story, and we will definitely be doing that. Okay, well that's a wrap. Kelvin, I really hope I'm not giving up on the Blue Jays yet. I know you are, but I'm not.
Set the bar low. It's easier to exceed expectations.
Spoken like a true Leafs fan.
You sandbagger. Lyndsey, have yourself a good weekend.
Everyone as well.
Kelvin Sandbagger Heppner. If you have any feedback, send me an email, s80@realagriculture.com. Have a great weekend, everybody, and thanks so much for tuning in, of course, to RealAg Radio's podcast. Thank you so much. Chat again next week.